We are back once again. Vin and Dave's Destination Unknown. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. This is fantastic. It's a little rainy outside, you know.
Oh, dude, yeah. I think that people are going to get the ambiance of the rain. They may hear a little bit of the faux wood stove in the background. I'm looking at it. It's just, I think it's perfect for...
What do you mean faux? That's entirely real.
The gas-burning wood stove. It's really fake is what it is, but it's, yeah. Well, we're going to be getting into in this show, I think this show is really, it's a discussion of reality.
It is, and about what is fake and what is real.
What is fake? What is real? When does that which is fake become real?
Yeah.
Which means we'll probably end up talking about wrestling at some point here.
Woo! Yes, indeed.
We always do.
How can we not?
Yeah, right. So we started into the first few sips of wine this evening.
Yes.
What are we into? The wine. I think we went more with sort of name and trying to embrace a concept this evening. Since we're back from the break, right? We took a little 1 week break. So what do we got? Let's roll these out.
First off, so these are both cabs because we do love our cabs. This is from California. It's 2016, called Imagery.
Such a very cool label. That's actually a cutout on the label that's like goes down to a drop. I love that. So inventive. Love it.
It's very nice. And it multiple meanings, right? I mean, it could just be like a drop of something, or it could be a plunging neckline.
It could be. Ooh, it could be that as well. Yeah.
So,
okay.
Pretty awesome.
I like it.
So far, so good. It tastes good.
It's good.
I mean,
yeah.
Decent wine.
Yeah.
This one is one we'll be getting into later. This is Hedges Family Estate Cabernet. This is 2014. Now, this one is from Washington. So
we haven't done a Washington wine yet.
We have not. And the interesting thing, and I thought it was particularly suitable for tonight, is, we have the California versus Washington thing.
Right.
And it's almost a religious war in and of itself.
It is.
Do the better wines come from California or from Washington? And, it speaks to the topic that we're going to be discussing tonight.
We are. If people want to become wine sponsors for the show, we always love that. So we are waiting for some more wine sponsors. We've had some great ones in the lead up. This is our 19th week of doing this. We've had some fantastic wine sponsors. If you don't want to go through all of the rigmarole of getting in touch with me at show@vinarmani.com, getting our address and shipping it out, finding the wine, if you want to do that, please do. Proof of work. We like it.
Or you could just drive it here yourself.
You could do that too.
We have had that
occur. We have had that occur. But what you really would probably want to do, because it's efficient, is we have a affiliate deal with Winc.com. That's WINC. If you go to vinarmani.com/wine, it'll take you right to Winc.com. You'll be all loaded up. Winc has a great wine club that you can join. You first, even if you don't join the club, fill out their little quiz, their little palate quiz, and that's going to tell you how to, it's going to basically tell you what kinds of wines you would probably like if you're not a wine connoisseur. And if you want to do some wines for us, all you got to do is you can get a gift certificate. It'll allow us to pick 4 wines or however many you put on the gift certificate, and then Winc will ship them right to us. You don't have to worry about it at all, and you can be a wine sponsor. Send us a nice note along with that, and we will share your wine and enjoy it. Maybe you get a bottle for yourself and a bottle for us, and we enjoy it together on a Friday evening. So if you want to do that, vinarmani.com/wine. Okay.
Nice. Now, I would actually say that is analogous to... Like if you want to buy wine and drive it here, that's like running Bitcoin Core, right?
Right.
And then if you want to just go to Winc, it's like running the app on the phone.
Right. It's an SPV wallet, right?
Yeah, it's much lighter weight. It's more convenient. It doesn't take as much effort. It's very easy to do.
Well, it's all of these. We're coming into a time. So today we're going to talk about I'm not going to call it the Bitcoin Cash fork. Some people are still calling it the Bitcoin Cash fork. Some people are still calling it the... Roger Ver got on and he called it, the scheduled planned upgrade. No, this is a hash war. That's what's
Yes.
about to happen. This is the first hash war in history, and it was actually your suggestion to switch what we had a topic. It was your suggestion to switch to this. I'm glad that you made that suggestion because it's historical what's about to happen.
So originally we were going to talk about bad laws and the unintended consequences of those bad laws. The problem is that's always applicable. We could literally talk about that today or 6 months from now. It's going to be exactly the same.
Right.
This is happening right now. And it is really important. And honestly, I didn't recognize the importance of it until this week. And you put out a couple of videos. There's been a ton of traffic on this on Twitter, different social media outlets, and people do not recognize the importance of what is about to happen in less than a week.
Yeah, I think, you reach these moments where, well, look, I was just having this conversation with someone who was interviewing me, and they were asking about the 10-year anniversary, because we just had the 10-year anniversary of the white paper.
Yep.
It was October 31st. It was Halloween that he released the white paper in 2008. So, I was asked to give my thoughts on it, and I had just written this piece on Hal Finney, so I was, it was fresh in my mind looking through that particular thread on the cryptography mailing list. And you think about the impact that Bitcoin has already had in 10 short years. The fact that it went from being not even in existence to, because if you count the entire cryptocurrency ecosystem, which doesn't exist without Bitcoin, I mean, yes, the individual market cap of the coins is, in the hundreds of billions. I think it's about 200 billion is the total market cap of all the coins.
Wow.
But that's not counting the valuation and the value of all of the companies that are involved in the ecosystem.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Right? So, which is much, much larger than that. And the fact that Bitmain, the biggest miner in the space, is they're about to do their IPO, and it's going to be the biggest initial public offering of stock ever in the history of the world.
Wow. I think what was Alibaba, was the last one.
Was before that.
Yeah.
So this is going to be bigger than Alibaba.
Wow.
And this is, they're Bitcoin miners.
Yeah.
They're Bitcoin miners.
And this, just to be clear, is not an ICO.
No, this is
actually a legit
IPO.
Yeah. On the stock market.
On the Hong Kong. It's on the Hong Kong exchange. I don't know what the Hong Kong, maybe it's just called the Hong Kong exchange, but that's where they're listing this. It's a major, the Hong Kong exchange is a major, major, major exchange, and it has been for a very, very long time. It's one of the oldest, as a matter of fact. So it's a big deal. This is not a small deal. And what we're seeing is, I think the reason why people don't see it is the same reason why it was only, you imagine that, because somebody said this to me the other day. They were like, well, you could get another Satoshi. You would just take 100 smart people and stick them in a room and you get that. And I was like, hold on. We actually have proof that that is not the case.
Yeah.
Because Satoshi released the white paper on a cryptography mailing list that was your 100 smart people in a room who know about cryptography.
Yeah.
And besides Hal Finney, no one even responded to the white paper when he released it 10 years ago.
That's crazy.
Hal Finney was like, oh, I'm excited for it. And if people want to know the connection between Hal Finney and Satoshi, they can probably Google my name and Hal Finney and Satoshi and hopefully run across the stuff that I've been writing. But it is that. And I think that that's what we're experiencing, is that most people, when something historic happens, most people don't know that they're in the midst of something historic happening.
Absolutely. And, just an example from pro wrestling. How many of us really recognized during the Attitude Era that WWE had?
Oh, God.
That we were witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime, convergence of superstars never before,
Right,
and
right.
probably never again, Because in one ring at the same time, we had Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, The Rock, we had Stone Cold Steve Austin, we had all the biggest stars.
Yeah.
And, then we had the Monday Night Wars going on, very much like the war that's about to happen, where we had, the outsiders coming in and Hall and Nash and all that. And that was a moment in history that, now we can go back and watch on WWE Network and check it out. And it's amazing to relive some of that stuff. And, seeing Mike Tyson in the ring with Stone Cold and the electricity that happened there and the whole, Vince McMahon bad guy thing. It was unbelievably historic for wrestling. And
I think more than for wrestling, because wrestling has always been, in America, it's always been a cultural bellwether.
Absolutely.
And I think that was the moment where it had been a thing, obviously. I mean, I grew up in that sort of, I guess that was really a golden era, the time when it moved into really being the WWF. You know what I mean? And your Hulk Hogan's and your Andre the Giants and whatnot. And that was a particular era.
Yep.
But the era that you're talking about was when it became truly huge, worldwide, billion-dollar business. And what does that look like?
Yeah.
Right? When it had fully matured into an entire wing of entertainment. And what was interesting is that it started at this sort of local circuit. Started in the carnivals, right? These wrestlers, right? And then it eventually got up, and then it all culminated into, at one point, there was just no other game in town, really. And now you see that now you have smaller operations, but they're copying not the small operation model, they're copying the large model, all trying to move up in this. So it's this very interesting feedback loop.
Yeah. And what happened with the Monday Night Wars was you had a billionaire come in from the outside and say, I want a piece of this action, and try to forcibly take over the business, from the people.
You're talking about Ted Turner.
I am talking about Ted Turner. Or I could be talking
Donald
about
Trump?
The billionaire that is trying to take over Bitcoin Cash. I don't know. Maybe.
Right. Okay. I see where you're making the connection.
Yeah.
And I think that it's an apropos connection, because we're talking about this is definitely a you said this when you came in. This is definitely a religious war that is occurring. Could you just say back, because it was so brilliant what you said about what people had thought, where people had thought the threat was, or where they thought that the 51% attacking would come from. It was brilliant what you said before the show, and I'd just like to get it on, on tape.
Oh, I should run a tape recorder all the time. Wait, tape recorder, is that still a thing? I don't think so.
I think that's why we're doing the show, is because we said that we should be doing that during our conversations. So
it's true. So basically, what I was saying before the show was that everyone has kind of envisioned that there would be a 51% attack at some point, and everyone had thought that it would be against, the main Bitcoin network, and it would be instigated by some crypto terrorist or some kind of, state-funded actor. I don't think anyone ever saw it coming, in the way that it's about to happen. One, it's not happening on the main, Bitcoin network. It's happening on Bitcoin Cash. And, of course, there is the argument Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin and all that. But setting that aside for the moment, this is really a schism between two groups within the same network. And it is very much a religious war. It is very much a partisan conflict, right? So, we don't have some kind of terrorist organization. We don't have, a state like, North Korea or somebody coming in and pouring billions of dollars into hash power. We basically have two religious zealots basically going at it, to the two sides. And one of those sides is actually led by somebody with a PhD in theology. So we have a theologian waging a religious war.
It's I have been recommending to people for quite a while now. It's a lot to get through, but it's well worth it to get through. I think the most interesting part is the beginning, but this is Darmaid McCullough's book Christianity the first 3,000 years. And I actually started reading it because I was watching an old speech that Christopher Hitchens was giving, and he was I think when he had cancer, as a matter of fact, he had said that he had been reading this book, and it was very interesting. He was giving a talk, I think, about Islam at the time, but he was talking about reading this book, and I was like, yeah, that's maybe pretty interesting. So what's so cool is that it's that early period. So we're talking, after Jesus, kind of after Paul, when you have all of these disparate sects. And one of the coolest things is that how weird Christianity got. Like, it got really weird in these. There was a whole sect of people these sort of, I don't know whether you call them monks or what, but they would live on top of pillars. So that it was kind of like they were like kind of like a guru.
Yeah.
Like they would climb to the top of these pillars.
I've seen this in art. Yeah.
And then they would just live on the top, and people would like bring them food and all of this, and they were just sort of like holy men. And so people would sort of, it's like a totemic belief. People would be sort of circling around this, and they would be like preaching from up there, and they'd be meditating, and they'd be doing all this. And then you had like the Essenes, and you had the Gnostics, and you had all these different branches that all came out. And there were, they were fighting over, there were real wars that happened. There have been real wars that happened throughout Christianity. But at this time, it was really for control of the hearts and minds of the faithful more than it was for control of territory. So you reached a time in, like, certainly during the 30 Years' War, Protestant Reformation, the Crusades, all of these were religious wars where you're fighting for territory. But in the early days, they were still fighting for a scarce resource, and that was the ability to control the direction of the community of the faithful. And where I think that there are some great parallels here is that, we see this from Paul's letters, right? I mean, the names of the books tell you that the communities were spread all over the place. Romans, Corinthians, et cetera, right? So these are his letters that he's sending out to these various different communities, which tells you that it is very similar to the Bitcoin community, to the cryptocurrency community, where they were a culture of people that was no longer in a single location like the Jews had been. Their attachment was not to the temple. They didn't need to be near it. They didn't need to travel to it on holidays. Holy days, right? They just needed, they were worshiping in their own communities, but they were trying to have some sort of a coherent narrative between them. This sounds very, very similar to Bitcoin to me. Yeah. And they would try to, at various different times, have councils and bring people together, because there were these wars between these personalities of, well, I think that then, and it was all about what is the nature of God, what is the nature of Jesus? Was Jesus a man? Was Jesus divine? Was he half man, half divine? Is it metaphorical that he died? Well, I mean, these things moved when the church broke back up. They had these fights again in the Protestant Reformation, and they turned bloody. It's like, the idea of transubstantiation. Most people who are not really deep into their theology wouldn't understand that there were bloody wars fought over a dispute about, when I take communion,
it's cannibalism.
Yeah. Am I really, really eating the blood? Does the bread and wine become the blood and flesh of Christ, or is it a metaphor? That was literally grounds for a war.
Yeah.
And that's why I see we should not be surprised, and we should not just push it to the side that when you say Dr. Craig Wright, the doctor is a doctorate in theology.
Yeah.
Don't push that to the side when you see a man starting a war that looks like an old school religious war, but you wouldn't know that because you are not a doctor in religious history.
Right.
And if you want to know who's going to win a religious war, it might be somebody who actually knows what a religious war looks like, as opposed to the opponent who doesn't even know they're in a religious war.
Right. And knows how to fight a religious war and knows how the successes of the past, if you want to call them that, were achieved.
Right. And so that's what we're looking at, is that when you look at when they look at this hash war 200 years from now, they're going to look and they're going to be like, wait, there was a code, there was a op code in there. Well, what would this code have allowed? And they're going to be like, well, it would have allowed, basically, it just would allow you to do cheaper something that you could already do, but it would just cost you more money. They're going to be like, what? Wait, they fought a war over that? Like, that doesn't even make any sense. And now, in fighting the war, we're not going to see it as a big deal because they're going to drop the value of this chain significantly. The price is going to bottom out. That's how a hash war is fought, and we've got time. We're going to talk about this, but so now people are like, not really that big of a deal, because there are very few people who are depending on that chain's stability to feed their families.
Right.
The lights don't go off if that chain loses stability.
Yeah.
But like, let's extrapolate it out, because we're talking about Bitcoin becoming world money.
Yep.
Let's imagine that Bitcoin was world money. And let's imagine that the entire world economy became unreachable, that every bank, every financial transactions, they all became I don't want to go mark of the beast on everybody right here.
Yeah,
right?
might as well. I mean,
not. The whole idea of the mark of the beast is that you cannot transact, you can't buy or sell unless you have the mark of the beast.
Yeah, and how was that implemented biblically, right?
Well,
so
in the hand or the forehead, right?
Yep, and it was by force. You
Yes.
had to do it.
Yes.
You were forced into it, and you could not transact business without it.
Right. And so imagine, let's extrapolate this out, and why the first hash war is so important if Bitcoin is going to become world money, which I believe, and I think you probably are sympathetic to that as well.
Absolutely. I think it already has in a lot of, so there are a lot of economies that have been severely depressed, and they are using crypto of various forms.
Absolutely.
You're facilitating that through CoinText.
I am.
And, and also, as with the internet, as with most things in the world, they are driven by porn and the mob.
Sure.
And, porn and the mob were some of the first, consumers to jump on crypto.
For sure.
And
the internet, by the way.
And
period.
The internet.
Period.
It's why VHS won over Betamax.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's why the internet is what it is today.
Absolutely.
Because of the mob and porn, mostly porn. But
true.
It is true. So then when you take a look at, like when the Greek economy collapsed, the Grecian mob, the mafia, they invested in Bitcoin. I mean, they have tons of Bitcoin because that's where they put their money. Their fiat had some value. They invested it all in Bitcoin.
That's right.
And kept it there.
That's right.
And so that's why they survived through crypto. So, I really do think that the concept of Bitcoin or crypto in general as world currency has already started happening.
Right. It's almost a fait accompli at this point. So you imagine that. So what is a hash war? Maybe we should talk about what is a hash war, and then it makes it easier to extrapolate out. So
that would actually help me a lot.
Okay. Yeah, this is something that people don't understand, and I've been trying to talk about, and it's weird because I hate this. There is this. It's almost like nails on a chalkboard when people say what people don't understand about Bitcoin. Maybe that's not what it is, because everybody's going to understand this. It's just what they don't see yet.
Yeah.
Craig Wright and Calvin Ayre have been talking about this hash war and basically laying out, not fully explaining, but very much just going forward as though, well, the people that know what we're talking about, this will make a lot of sense to them. I think that some of that is the nature of when you know that you've got a good hand, that you just feel like you can talk shit. Yeah. You can openly be like, yeah, we're about to do a hash war. They invented the name hash war. Mm-hmm. We're about to do this thing. We're going to call it a hash war. You don't know what it is, but let me tell you how I'm going to kick your ass and how you can't stop it.
Yep.
And that's very much what they're doing. And I think in some ways that's a very important thing to do if you're about to really kick somebody's ass. It's important to stop future challenges, mm-hmm. because I guess it's kind of something like the atomic bomb, to where it's like, you could say to somebody like, look, you can end this war now, or we are going to vaporize 4 or 5 of your cities. And they're like, vaporize? What are you talking about, vaporize? No, we're actually going to vaporize 4 or 5 of your cities, like magic, like poof. We're going to vaporize them. You look and be like, what are you talking? These guys are they're bluffing, they're blustering, they don't know. But then if you got some information about the atomic bomb, if you saw it being tested, then you might think differently.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at with the hash war. So Satoshi Nakamoto writes about the 51% attack. Almost the entire Bitcoin white paper is a discussion about the 51% attack. That's what Nakamoto consensus is really beating. His idea is, if you can build a network, so his network is, it's yes, there's cryptography, but that's only just to prove who owns things. Fundamentally, it's about having a majority of, basically what he says, it's the last sentence of the introduction of the white paper, where he says the network is secure if a majority of CPU power is controlled by honest nodes and not attacker nodes.
Yeah.
And the whole rest of the white paper is basically an exposition of that idea. And his idea is, and he says it multiple times, he says they could attack the chain, and by attack the chain, that means act in a not honest way. He's really dealing with double spending, the idea that you could spend to somebody, and then if you had a majority of CPU power, 51%, you could basically reclaim that transaction and spend it again, and reclaim that transaction and spend it again. And he says, well, but somebody really wouldn't do that, because every time they did that, they would drop the value overall of Bitcoin. And why would you do that if you're the biggest miner if you're the main person with skin in the game when it comes to Bitcoin?
Right.
This is a very good economic incentive, logical argument. It's somebody who's clearly studied Austrian economics. It's someone who gets it. Mm-hmm. But see, there's always, like with every technology, there's always an exploit. And that's what people aren't seeing, is they're still operating under an old paradigm of that Nakamoto consensus. And so it's very hard, especially this is the crazy part, the longer you've been in Bitcoin, and this is where the religious part gets in, the longer you've been in Bitcoin, the more you believe that those walls are high, that Nakamoto consensus and the incentives are protecting you. Mm-hmm. And so when Craig Wright and Calvin Ayre say, we're going to launch a hash war, people say, well, obviously they're not going to do that, because look what Satoshi says. Satoshi says they wouldn't do that because it would cost them too much. They clearly, look what Satoshi says. Satoshi says they can't do that. And it's like, well, no, when you understand what they're doing, it makes a lot of sense. So what do they want? That's the thing. They've been talking for months and months and months. And their thing over and over and over again has been, we are miners. Miners choose. Miners determine what happens in Bitcoin. We are miners. Miners choose. Miners determine what happens in Bitcoin, which is true, but it's only 1/4 true. Because there are basically 4, it's like a sort of a game. It goes straight to the Varna system and all of that. Of course it's related. It goes to the suits of cards and the tarot suits. So you've got your 4 suits of Bitcoin. You've got your clubs, your Shudra. So those are your end users. Those are the most people, the hoi polloi, as Krista Rose calls them. The hoi polloi, those are just everybody. And their weapon is the club, right? They're just, there's a mass of them. And really, how do they choose within Bitcoin? Well, they choose which particular blockchain they're going to operate on.
Sure.
And by doing that, they exert in mass, they exert a massive economic influence. So this includes traders as well. They determine the price, really. The end user, at the end of the day, it's got to be a willing buyer, willing seller.
Yep.
That's what determines the price. So that's your hoi polloi. Then you have your second layer, which is your warrior layer, kshatriya. That's going to be like your application developers, your exchanges. Those are the people who are the connector between. They're basically members of the hoi polloi, but they're a little more technically advanced than the hoi polloi, and so they can communicate with the blockchain. So so they're the hoi polloi have to go through them to get to the blockchain.
Yes.
So you could say that they're like your knights. They're your lords. They're not fully the king, and they're not priests, but they're the sort of, you would go to your lord for him to petition the king. So they're the patricians. Krawitz calls them the patricians. So you've got these patricians. If you don't have a wallet developer, a wallet app, you can't interact with the blockchain. How are you going to do it?
Yeah.
I mean, you could teach yourself to code. You could write your own wallet software. You could do all of that, right? Just like you could, but they're the blacksmiths, and they're the sort of the lords. And so they represent the spade, the sword. That's their realm.
Yeah.
Then you have the protocol developers. So they're the priest class. They don't have any money, but they're the thinkers, and they're the ones who can actually, like, the priest class would be the ones actually copying out the Bible. They would be the ones who could actually quote scripture, who could speak all the languages. In particular, when we're talking about if it's Roman Catholicism, they could speak Latin, and they would do mass in Latin, no matter what country they were in the Roman Catholic world. That was one of the things Martin Luther was so against, was the Bibles were only in Latin.
Yeah.
If you didn't speak the language, you couldn't even read the Bible.
Yep.
So that's the code. That's the code that they speak. And then you have the capitalists, what's called the Vaishyas. So you have not merchants, not the merchant class. This is above the merchant class. These are the people with so they're the diamonds in the suit of the traditional Western playing cards, or their pentacles or coins in the tarot. So these are the individuals who have the power of the purse. And they're the ones who pay. So their control is over the Vipras, or the priest class, right? So they pay the priest class. They're the ones who build the cathedrals, who pay for the cathedrals, who pay for the art to be made, all of that, right? So it's their money that comes in. They are the benefactors of them. And so this is a play for the miners. This is how they fight each other. And so what they are going to do, and it's typical. It makes perfect sense when you think about who they are and what their power is. Their power is the power of the purse. It's all about money. Money is their weapon. What they're going to do is they're going to use the 51% attack to Craig Wright and Calvin Ayre, CoinGeek and nChain. I got those flipped around. It's Calvin Ayre of CoinGeek, Craig Wright of nChain. What they're going to do is they're going to split the chain. So there's going to be 2 blockchains. That's important. And then they're going to 51% attack the other chain while defending their chain. But the whole idea behind it, I've said it's a game of chicken. The whole idea is to drop the price. To drop the price to the point where the other capitalist is like, this is too expensive for my taste. It's basically poker, right? You keep raising the stakes, and it's like, we are willing to sit here. We're both going to suffer, both of us. Who's going to say uncle first, right? It's like a pain competition is what they're in. And so Calvin Ayre has said, one of the things about him is he's an outside billionaire, as you said. That's very important for this, because his important holdings are not in crypto.
Yeah, he's insulated. No matter what happens,
Exactly.
he's still rich.
No, not just rich, fabulously wealthy.
Fabulously well.
Yeah.
So we have our Ted Turner and our Eric Bischoff
There you go.
of this game.
Yes. And so that's so key. So that's what people don't understand about this, is that they don't understand that the entire game that they're playing with each other is we have to make this chain unusable. Mm-hmm. Well, what you really want to do is you need your chain to be usable, mm-hmm. and you need the other person's chain to be unusable.
Just like WCW and
exactly.
WWE. Yeah.
And so you're poaching from one another.
Yeah.
And so you need that to be a sustained state. You have to establish a sustained state. And the reason why is all of the exchanges are all announcing. They've all announced, basically all the major exchanges, and more are announcing every day. We are shutting down. Even BitPay is no longer taking payments in Bitcoin Cash.
Wow.
Starting like 2 hours before the fork is set to happen. Because you have to have the fork first, mm-hmm. before you can have the hash war.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're attacking themselves, and they won't do that, right? You have to have the fork first, then hash war.
Yep.
So everybody's shutting down their windows. Everybody's shutting down. So what your job is in order to win the war is your chain has to remain stable for a long period of time, while the other chain remains unstable for a long enough period of time for exchanges, merchant services, wallets to say they're fucked and give up on them. So it is really about hearts and minds. And I tweeted this out, that it's not a war of hash. It's a war for the hearts and minds of exchanges. They've got to believe that only one implementation is safe enough for them to connect to, mm-hmm. that they're not going to breach their fiduciary responsibility to their users. And if one chain can prove that for long enough, good to go. I think it's less than 3 weeks, unless the other side just capitulates. So basically you have two things. Mm-hmm. You can win that way by just a straight up, these guys are unusable, we're usable. I say that's about a 3 week thing. That the exchanges, if one can be sustained for maybe a week or two, after 3 weeks, the exchanges will, and this one is just completely screwed. After about 3 weeks, the exchanges will be like, okay, this one. The other way you win is the price is just going to be continuously dropping. And if the other side is like, oh my God, our holdings are going to be worth nothing. Mm-hmm. It's better for us to just surrender and take the loss where we're at and hope that the price can go back up. So work with these guys to take the price back up.
Yeah.
Rather than, and they can't dump now. These miners are the biggest holders. They can't dump because they'll do the same thing to the price.
Yeah.
And then what's the point of even mining? So that's how this hash war is going to go down. That's what it is. It's a new form of warfare.
So is there a defense, right? So let's say that, hash war's coming, reinforce the walls, bar the doors. Yep. How does one do that?
So there are, okay, so let's talk about what is it that you're trying to do? I think where Craig and Calvin, I think that you always have a blind spot. Mm-hmm. And I think that their blind spot is that they believe that they can harass a chain, and by that enough harassment of a chain in terms of hash power, so in terms of 51% attacks, will make it unusable.
Okay.
I don't necessarily think that's true. It's true as far as we know now, but really, honestly, all it's about is, can exchanges do business? That's right. Really the key. Can exchanges do business? If exchanges can do business, the price won't drop. If the price doesn't drop, there's no reason to continue the war. So part of the defense is not even at the protocol level. Part of the defense is at the application level. So smart application developers who are able to make that middle layer smart enough that it can route around the problems will basically make hash wars obsolete. But that's going to take a lot of work at that level. And that's the level that I work at. And so I have to tell you that these conversations are already occurring with app developers. There's private channels of many app developers that are already working on this, and we're setting out, okay, what are the rules of how we would make this happen? Because we need to keep our services running.
Yeah.
Some of these guys, they have a vested interest because they only support Bitcoin Cash. They've made the decision to go all in with Bitcoin Cash. They can't shut their business down.
Yeah.
Like an exchange can just shut down one coin. It's not going to work for them.
No.
So the other defense, so your defenses are bring on massive hash power. That's one thing. But also attacking. So you don't just need to defend. You're also going to really want to be prepared to attack the other chain, because remember, winning is twofold. It's not just enough to have one chain be unstable. The other chain has to be stable as well. So you can get a lot of bang for your buck attacking as well. Mm-hmm. If you're unstable, you definitely want the other guy to be unstable.
Yeah.
If you don't have enough hash to prevent yourself from being unstable, then you're going to need to attack on the other side. Now, this is the first hash war. So this is going to be mainly fought with hash. Mm-hmm. But where this gets crazy is you start extrapolating these things out. And so now let's extrapolate it out. Okay, so that's where this was a long journey to extrapolation. So let's say Bitcoin is world money. Mm-hmm. Let's say people are really relying upon this for their livelihood. It's what keeps the lights on. It's what keeps the heat on in winter. You pay it with Bitcoin. The entire holdings of the utility company are in Bitcoin. They pay their employees and vendors in Bitcoin.
Are you saying it's too big to fail?
Well, I'm saying it's so big and there's no way to, because it's a permissionless system, you can't stop an attacker from coming in.
Sure. Yeah.
There's no legal way to stop them. It's permissionless and it's global. There's no prevention. And you wouldn't want prevention anyway, because you don't want to create that permission system, because then the state definitely will grab control, right? So I'd rather have Craig in control than the state in control, because if I wanted the state in control, I would just use fiat.
Yeah.
Right? Until Craig proves to be too terrible of a dictator and has too much control, and then everybody goes back to fiat, and then we start over again. Or by that time, hopefully there's some sort of genius who's come up with some other alternative, which Craig, being the dictator that he is, will make that happen, right? This is the hero's journey. That's what you get. Yeah. So,
especially when you're your biggest fan.
Exactly. So you extrapolate this out, and it's like, okay, so what would happen if you had world money and then the big miners went to war? You want to talk about devastation.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the entire economy grinding, the world economy grinding to a halt, and what's the alternative? Because it's replaced fiat.
Yeah.
So it's funny that we've been talking about Bitcoin as it's so ironic, but that's how it always works. We've been talking about Bitcoin as the solution to preventing a global financial crash. But as it turns out, Bitcoin is going to be the money when we have a global financial crash.
Yeah. Not only that, but I mean, so there are three, right? Like, okay, so we have the hash war, we have, religious wars and conflicts that occur amongst the miners, right? Another option is we have an electromagnetic pulse event, perhaps a, class X flare from the sun that completely fries every electronic device on Earth. It's happened before. It happened in the 1800s. It took down the telegraph system. Fortunately, that was the only technology really that they had in the day that was affected, was the telegraph system. It fried the entire country telegraph system. But if that happened today, it would wipe out all the electronics, right? We would be sent back to the dark ages. Not just, we can't access our Bitcoin, but businesses aren't open, and we can't turn the lights on, and our cars won't start. I mean, that level of technological impact. And then the third, which I have strangely lost. It was right on the top of my mind, and now it's gone.
That's the wine. That's good wine.
It is very good wine. But no, I think that there are three. I will think of the third before too much longer. But we definitely have like infighting, and then we have some global catastrophe. Oh, and then the third is quantum computing, of course. So quantum computing would really just wipe all this out. Now, what are the chances that a religious zealot is going to obtain a quantum computer and just do all of this themselves anyway?
Well, I think if Craig is able, or whoever comes after Craig, because that's the other part about this.
He's just the first.
Yeah, he's just the first wannabe. I mean, just like, Alexander the Great was the first. And after that, there were a lot of wannabe, world conquerors.
Sure.
Still to this day, there are wannabe world conquerors. And so Craig is just the first, and there will be someone after him. And it is in that person's best interest to spend a significant amount of capital in pursuit of the quantum computer just to prevent somebody else from getting it. It'll be, I could see it being similar to a nuclear arms race, because it is a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's absolutely, and it's the nuclear weapon of Bitcoin. It's the nuclear weapon of hash wars.
Of all of cryptography. I mean, anything from cryptocurrency to just your, passwords to websites, your web traffic. That's
the thing is,
encrypted.
You wouldn't, if you had control, you would not want to. It's the same way that the U.S. treats the nuclear arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
You don't use it. It's just the fact that you have it.
Sure.
And it's sort of mutually assured destruction. So, whoever. Really, I think that what we are coming to at this point is certainly a time of minors. I think that helps us to know how long this plan has been in the works. Because I think if we go back to when Craig Wright started in on this weird rhetoric and Calvin Ayre, this weird rhetoric of miners choose and miners are everything, I think that gives us an indication of when they figured this out.
Mm-hmm.
I know it was at least back in June, because that's when I fell afoul of them, was when I started seeing this miners choose narrative. It was probably before that. I think it was probably before the CoinGeek conference. I think if we go back to whenever it was that they had organized that, because I think a lot of what that was bringing out the people who were in the space, who were in Bitcoin Cash, and kind of wowing them and trying to buy the ones that you could buy.
Sure. Yeah.
And then destroy the ones that don't take the bribe, which is that's the beginning of 300.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. That's that famous madness. This is Sparta. Because first he offers him riches.
Oh, yeah. Beyond belief.
First he offers him riches. And then that's what that whole scene is about. And then when Leonidas says no, and then the messenger is like, the emissary is like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Do you dare to refuse a god king? This is madness. And that's what he's like, madness. This is Sparta. Boom, kicks him in. And that was sort of, so they first come with the bribe. They first come with gold, because it's much easier to bribe you than it is to fight you. But then they're definitely gonna fight you. And so it's so interesting that we see them playing these things out. Now, whether that's conscious or whether it's unconscious, I tend to believe that these are archetypal, that we're playing out, that these are archetypal stories, and they're archetypal stories for a reason, and that is because we play them out unconsciously. Yeah. They're coming from the unconscious or the subconscious. A little bit of probably I think Jung would say these are the unconscious. because these are things that are beyond our own psyche. Our subconscious would be the things that are, at least from a Freudian standpoint, are buried inside of us. Jung has a very different interpretation of the way the consciousness works, but certainly the archetypes are coming from what Freud would say would be the unconscious, would be that which is not about us, that which is sort of existing before us, the same place that how fast our heart beats and how our eyes focus and all of the same place that comes from is where these archetypes come from. So we play them out by instinct.
Yeah, and we have no choice in the matter.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
we have to be following this path. So, when we talk about, who's behind this, right? And we talk about Craig Wright, and we talk about,
Calvin Ayre.
Calvin Ayre. So we have the money bags, right?
Yeah.
So we got a guy who's, he's a billionaire, in real life, not in crypto life.
Right.
And he can pay for anything he wants. I mean, there are levels of wealth, and I've experienced different levels of wealth in my own life. Never been a billionaire, never even been a millionaire.
Right.
But I can say that there have been times in my life when $100 was a whole lot of money.
Sure, me too. Absolutely.
And there were other times in my life where $100 was,
Burn it.
I'm gonna tip this guy $100.
Exactly. Sure.
So there are different levels of that. And so we take somebody who is a fiat billionaire, who I don't know much about this guy. So
very few people know a lot about Calvin Ayre. He's the founder of Bodog.
Yeah, but
which is the online gaming company.
Does he seem like an on it kind of guy? Like he knows like where the next big thing's going to happen, and he's sharp.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't spent a ton of time with him, but I did get to have lunch with him in May in Hong Kong, and I was first off, the event that he put on was really fantastic. Like it was just mind-blowingly good. And as somebody who's done events my whole life, this was incredibly impressive. Incredibly.
Wow.
Like I was just at every step of the way, I was just like, wow, this could not have been done better.
Wow.
And that says something. That really says something. I know how hard event production is.
Yeah.
To do it so well.
Almost suspiciously well.
Right. It told me, this dude's got his shit together in a big way. Mm-hmm. In a big way. Like when you see that someone's really got their shit together in something that you consider yourself to be very proficient at, and so you're really able to judge the subtle aspects of it.
Yeah.
Down to having a makeup artist do makeup on everybody before they went on stage.
Wow. See,
at a crypto conference.
That is like Xerxes level of
welcome. He's Xerxes. He is absolutely Xerxes from 300. That's exactly who he is.
Awesome. So he's a 10-foot tall gay guy. Okay, sweet.
Well, but he's also, he's 57, but he's like ultra fit, super stylish.
Yep.
He is rolling around. He put together this VIP yacht party. The pictures went pretty viral in crypto Twitter, but he put this thing together, and he's got the atmosphere models walking around. There's champagne flowing, barbecue. It's just the whole nine on a 110-foot yacht.
When you're trying to send a message, you want to make sure that everything is coherent, everything is aligned with your message. Mm-hmm. And when you produce something that coherent, that spectacular, that congruent with what you're trying to do, that crosses into a level of manipulation.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Well, I felt that. I felt that from the beginning. I mean,
that makes my skin crawl.
When I'm on the top deck of this yacht and I look out, and they've brought out not just the yacht, but they've brought out this very high-end speedboat, and he's not
It wasn't the dinghy.
No, he's not water skiing behind the speedboat.
Yeah.
He's doing something I had never seen before. He's surfing the wake of the speedboat. So
Nice.
he's not attached. He's on a surfboard.
Yeah.
He's on a surfboard.
Not attached to the boat.
Not attached to the boat.
Surfing the wake.
Surfing the wake.
That's awesome.
Following the boat. And this is a 57-year-old man.
Mm-hmm. So you remember.
Anybody who would, seeing all of that, anybody who would underestimate what this man could do if he said he was going to do something is fucking stupid.
Right. Yeah, this is somebody who is, like, almost to a fault, committed to doing whatever he wants to do.
That's right. Absolutely.
If he can think of it, he can do it. Which takes an immense level of personal control and, like, inner discipline.
Which is why I know that he is the controlling hand and not Craig Wright. Because Craig Wright does not. Craig Wright is brilliant. He's maybe the smartest person in Bitcoin because now, it's all about how you judge what is Bitcoin. You know, Daniel Krawitz, and you've spent time with Daniel and you've spent time with Chris.
Daniel, if you're out there, I love you, brother. We got to talk physics sometime.
Yes. He, I mean, he's got a master's in theoretical physics. You know what I mean? So, and he believes that Craig is maybe the smartest person in Bitcoin. And I think Daniel is the smartest person in Bitcoin, but that's neither here nor there.
Craig certainly believes Craig is the smartest person in Bitcoin.
Well, that would be the smartest person in Bitcoin should probably believe that they're the smartest person in Bitcoin.
So it's interesting, right? Like, Tesla is one of my big three. You know this.
But didn't he believe that he was the smartest person?
No.
Okay.
He thought other people were foolish for things that they believed and things like that. But he was not a self-promoter, really. Now, you know, some of the people around him were self-promoters, big time. But he himself was actually fairly reserved. Now, I will say one of his quotes really spoke to me about this whole situation.
Go ahead.
One must be sane to think clearly, but one can think deeply and be quite insane. And that's what I think is happening here.
You've got one man thinking clearly and one man who's insane.
Deeply.
Right. The insane man is thinking deeply, and the man who's thinking clearly is pulling from the depth.
Well, so you have the puppetmaster, the billionaire.
Yes.
He is clearly directing this because he thinks clearly about everything in his life because he has the self-discipline almost to a ridiculous level to accomplish this.
Right.
I mean, you've been in an industry where you had to be at top physical fitness and your diet had to be on
People
point.
don't understand what that takes to do for years and years and years and years.
Yeah. Right? Like, people look at bodybuilders and they're like, they don't understand. They get 4 or 5 months off every year. So, you know, they're eating pizza. No, if you're going to be in top physical form,
that's right,
365 days out of the year, it takes a ridiculous amount of self-discipline.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it sounds like this guy has been operating at that level for many, 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 probably his entire life. Probably his whole life.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't be at that level at the age of 57 and not having fallen off if you hadn't been self-made billionaire.
Yeah.
Billion. I mean, that's 1,000 million.
Yeah.
You can't spend $1 billion, and that's his personal fortune. That's his personal fortune.
Right. It takes a certain amount, like almost. Like almost a spectrum level of discipline and focus to make that happen. And so, to me, he's the clear thinker.
Of course, yes.
And then you have Craig Wright, who is the deep thinker. Now, I grant you, he may be brilliant. He may have a very high IQ. He may understand things about what Satoshi created that even Satoshi didn't understand.
He clearly does.
It's entirely possible. But he also isn't thinking clearly.
He's a madman.
He is. He is thinking
He's
an
absolute fucking madman.
And he is being manipulated.
Of course he is.
By a master.
Clearly.
Clearly.
Love
it. Well done, sir.
Yeah, which is why it makes this situation so, these people who are saying, "Oh, it's just a bluff. It's just," well, yeah, if it was Craig. If it was just Craig, but when you understand what we just exposited here, then you understand, oh shit.
Yeah, we're in trouble.
Oh shit. Oh my God, what the fuck is about to happen right now?
Yeah.
And I've understood that for a while. And I think it is because part of it is because I got to have the bribe come to me.
Mm-hmm.
I had every opportunity. N-Chain were the first people. We hadn't released a product. We had a white paper.
Wow.
Way before this, in February already, Jimmy Nguyen, the CEO, was asking me to give them a number so that he could take it to the board of directors because they were making investments at that point.
Mm.
He asked, and we were like, whoa, that's weird. No, Jimmy, we'd actually like to release our product first. Then we can give you
So you're thinking small. You're thinking small, son. You got to think big.
Yeah, we don't actually know what our valuation is at this point. But it was like because Craig and we had a very positive personal relationship. We were messaging with each other privately, and he was showing me. But now I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, that was. I'm sure that game was going on with a lot of people. He was showing me pictures of his Lambo and pictures of, oh look, I just moved into my new house in England. Look at this fucking mansion that he lives in. You know what I mean? And all of this, and I was like, yeah, great, wonderful for you. I was like, wow, this insecure bastard. Like, let's go. But I guess what makes me different than them is I spent the last decade in a profession where hanging out in international destinations and 5-star hotels and riding around in luxury cars and being in, skyboxes for games and all of this, the highest end nightclubs with bottle service and all of that. I was getting paid to do that.
Yeah.
Like, that was normal. I would expect that. Like, if I showed up and I didn't, and one of my clients wasn't at a 5-star hotel, me and my agent would be like, man, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
Like,
wait, I'm at the wrong place.
Yeah, what? Like, maybe I'm not even going to see this client again. It wasn't even about they're paying the same amount, but it's like, whoa, you're really going to have me out here in some fucking little rinky-dink? I know you're paying, but goddamn, like, have some class.
Come on down to the Motel 6, man.
You know what I mean? So it's like I've seen the fact that it was like, oh, it's at the Four Seasons in Hong Kong, and here's your hotel room, and it was like, oh, a car picked you up at the airport, and we're paying for a first class international flight for you, and it's like, okay, that's not a first for me.
Yeah, not weird.
None of this is strange.
Yeah.
We had lunch, Calvin Ayre, and he brought everybody, and they came down, and they were like, oh, Calvin would like to have you guys up here. And as we're walking up, the woman goes, yeah, this is 3 Michelin star. And I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And the little Spanish guy that I was with as we went up there was like very impressed. But to me, like, I've had clients to where every single time I see them, they're like, I could not, you don't know how hard it was to find a Michelin rated restaurant in this city, but I found the one that's got 2 Michelin stars. So that's where we're going. That was normal for me.
Yeah.
That was a normal Wednesday night for me. And I got paid to do that.
Yeah. See, I it's so funny because obviously I was not in the same profession you were in. I was in a different profession, but
very few people were in the profession exactly that I was in. So.
That's correct. But I did have similar enough experiences that all that wore off on me so fast.
Oh, like, it's like 5 seconds.
Yeah. Like, in the beginning, it was like, oh, wow, this is pretty cool. And then after, like, the second or third time, you're like, oh, God, really?
But you know what? If you've never had that before,
it's huge.
You get stars in your eyes about it. You know what I mean?
Or if your value system is based on money. Right. And that's the other part, is that some people never grow out of it. Some people spend their entire lives
I know.
chasing that, oh, my God, I own a Lamborghini. So what, dude? The thing breaks down all the time. You got to pay $3,000 for an oil change. It's like, that is not a good car.
Yeah, Lambos get old real fast.
Real fast. And they're so small. Like, I barely fit in one.
And what, you're going to drive your Lamborghini to get groceries?
No, it's just stupid.
Well, that's the other thing. Like, you feel like an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
You feel like an asshole
And
driving your Lamborghini to get
should.
groceries. So it's like, oh, so I can't go and get groceries anymore because all I've got is this fucking Lamborghini.
Yeah. It is the worst. It is the absolute
you have
worst.
to get another car to just drive around so that you feel like a normal person. But then it's like, well, why didn't you just get that car to begin with? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, just buy a Subaru like everybody else. Come on.
Right. Unless you've got to really, nobody loves cars like that. There's just a very, very few people who are truly gearheads like that, and they can't afford a Lamborghini.
Now, you take a look at somebody like Jay Leno. He owns hundreds of cars.
But he really loves cars.
He loves cars. He keeps them all in, air-conditioned, warehouses and whatever.
Totally different story.
Whole different story.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he owns a Lamborghini or several, and he drives them occasionally.
Right.
Because
but
that's
he
what
also owns like Stanley Steamers and
Sure.
shit like that.
Oh,
like
yeah.
old,
Yeah.
crazy, one-of-a-kind cars, you know?
But it's not a status symbol. See,
No,
when
right.
it goes beyond status, and now he's just a collector. He's a collector because he's a fan.
Right. He loves cars.
That's a huge difference.
Yes.
If you're actually whipping out your phone to show somebody pictures of your car or your house, you're just a douchebag.
Yeah, basically. And so that's what I was getting from Craig, but I realized that it was, if I look back and I look at the entire build-up, I see that, you guys had a plan. You were trying to bring allies on board. You were going to do that with money first, because if you think about it, relatively cheap. It's with the current hash power on BCH, it's going to be $1 million a day to have 51% of the hash power on the network. That's going to considerably go up.
Wow.
The companies they invested in were that they were able to get these people who are basically now where they got majority share in all of these companies. Rarely did they invest $1 million in that particular. They probably spent on that CoinGeek conference. They probably spent maybe 1.5 million, maybe max. That's maximum. It was probably much less. It could have been closer to like 750,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's cheap.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about it is they got from that. If I look at so there was sort of several classes of individuals. It's a really interesting social study. It's a really cool study in like, how do you do this? So what you had is the class of individual who was a speaker, let's say. Mm-hmm. Most of the speakers were companies that they were either sort of wooing and interested in investing in, or individuals who were key individuals that they were interested in having as a strong strategic sort of partnership. And what's the most interesting thing was that so at the table when I had lunch with them, was what's so key. Sitting next to me was Roger Ver when I had lunch with Calvin, and
he's a big deal,
right? And Calvin, but I had known Roger before that as well. I'd interviewed him on my show. He was interested in investing in the business as well. Literally the day that we launched in March, our public beta, he was on the phone with me talking about, let's talk about how we could, possibly be a part of Bitcoin.com, and that really wasn't the direction that we were trying to go, but it was, and now I'm kind of glad. And the reason why was, it's interesting because what we said to him at the time, not to really speak out of school, but like just like the basics was, this might be a difficult deal to do because for us to be a part of Bitcoin.com, we have to take on your enemies, and that's going to make this an expensive deal for you because there's a cost for everything, and you have enemies. And if we're going to be on your team, we got to be paid to be on your team and take on your enemies. There's a cost associated with that. And here we are, not even a year later, and Craig Wright is Roger's enemy.
Yep.
So we had Roger Ver at the table, And then directly sitting, so it was Roger Ver, one other guy who's Craig's buddy, who's another online poker guy, Craig, then Amari Sachet, who's the lead developer for ABC, who's basically the main other belligerent. He's the benevolent dictator of the other implementation.
Yeah.
So he's Craig's biggest enemy right now. And then next to him, Johannes Vermorel, who's I think he's stayed way out. He was smart and he stayed way out of this. He's about the money. He's got his own very successful logistics and supply chain business, and so he's kind of he's very ancillary to it. He's not really a Bitcoin person with it. He's not in the culture, right? So he's been like stepped way back. But it's so interesting to me that when you take him out at the table, you know, Calvin, it's interesting because in that room, there was another table, and Craig Wright was at that table, and other people were at that table. And there was another table, and Jihan Wu was at that table, and other people were at that table. I find it so interesting that Calvin clearly chose who was going to be at that table.
Oh, yeah.
And that the people who were at that table are all playing a major part in this hash war.
Yeah. He's the clear thinker.
He's so far thinking. And what's weird about it was he chose that table and they were all the people that he couldn't buy.
Yeah.
So he was going to try a charm offensive.
Mm-hmm.
He had figured out. Yeah, he had figured out these are the people that the money is not going to work with.
Right.
So I'm going to need to. There's going to need to be a charm offensive here.
Yeah.
So interesting when I look back on the way he had set it up, step by step by motherfucking step. Man.
Yeah. Imagine the Venn diagrams that he had figuring out who was going to sit at which table.
See,
and
I
who's
think
near
they're
each
all
other.
in his mind.
Probably.
I think he's a
Probably.
savant like that.
Yeah.
And that's how you make $1 billion self-made.
Yeah. Yep. Imagine the paper your brother could have written about that event.
Dude, my brother's a sociology professor, by the way. So, yeah, it really is amazing that we're sitting in this place. What I found so interesting about this is, you know, and someone had and it was interesting that for the first time someone said it on Twitter. It really told me that through all of this, it showed me that we really are dealing with another culture. I wrote about this in my book, Self-Ownership, about the idea of the crypto savage and this new culture, that we're in a new culture and we almost don't even know it. But it's been, you know, a week of sort of ongoing discussion on this. And it was the first time I had seen somebody say, they're going to have like legal repercussions about this. They're 51% attacking and there's going to be something legal. And I was like, what is the law against a 51% attack? Where is that a crime? Where is any of this within the purview of the government? Nothing.
How is
None.
it? Yeah. I mean, I'm not even sure how that person would have come to that conclusion.
I think because they just assume, well, this person is about to destroy this monetary value. They're about to go on this rampage, so that should be illegal. And it's like,
so they're one of those people that
new
think,
paradigm.
Yeah, they think that just because they think something is bad, therefore it must be illegal.
Right.
Right.
But this has nothing to do with the old culture.
No.
Nothing. And that's why it's so historical.
Yeah.
And that's why I believe that. So I've been comparing this to the Trojan War.
Yeah.
And you know, the thing about the Trojan War is that is the event, and no one really knows if the Trojan War really was a real event. It certainly wasn't a real event as it was described by Homer, because he's describing it hundreds of years later. And it's not, and the Romans are describing it 500. I mean, the Trojan War is supposed to have taken place sometime in 1300 to 1200 BC.
The thing, though, that interests me about the Trojan War is there are so many references. There are so many appearances of the narrative. in various works from various cultures.
Sure.
And whenever something is so widespread, I'm like, there must be some factual occurrence that happened in history that people are recalling and recording in their historical documents, because it's not just one culture wrote one book.
Right.
It is multitudes of books.
Well, they think they have the archaeological site. It's called Troy 7. They think they have the walls of Troy. They think they do. But the question is, was it 10 years long? Were all of these people involved? Were these really actually historical people, or were they, which is very kind of similar to the Jesus story, which is very kind of similar to the Satoshi story.
Yeah.
But what we do know about the Trojan War, or what we can sort of definitively say about it and its significance, is that was the moment that both Greek and Roman, because the Romans tie their lineage to the Trojan War as well, to Aeneas, who was one of the only Trojans who survived the Trojan War and who came to Italy. They escaped and came to Italy, and he's the progenitor, whether he's the grandfather or father, of Romulus and Remus in their mythology, who were the founding brothers of Rome.
Yes.
So they draw from the losing side, and from the winning side, that is Greek culture, comes from there. And so this is the moment when you move from the mythological, and in the Homer's epic stories, both the Odyssey and the Iliad, the gods are involved. The gods are real.
They're real characters.
In the time of the Trojan War, the gods are still real. They're really there.
Yeah.
But something happens after the Trojan War where the gods retreat and recede, and history comes. And so I think that is what we're dealing with now, because I think that, and there's some other things about it. Like, I think that shapeshift moving to a KYC AML situation, moving to be just like any other exchange where they were beholden to the state, and Eric Voorhees basically gave up the ghost on that. He was the separation of money and state. That was his. He lived in Eric Voorhees was living in New Hampshire when he went down to the New York meetup and met Roger Ver, that turned into BitInstant, which then turned into Satoshi Dice, which then turned into Shapeshift. Yeah. So these heroes, these are the heroes: Satoshi, Hal Finney, Nick Szabo. Even the kind of ancillary heroes, the Charlie Lees, even the Blockstream guys. I won't say even. I mean, they're significant. You know what I mean? The Adam Backs of the world, the Gavin Andresens, the Roger Veers, the Eric Voorhees. That's the mythological time of the heroes of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
The Vitaliks. This is the mythological time of the demigods of Bitcoin. And we're now moving into the historical age. And I think the historical age is going to start with this hash war. Yeah. And I think Craig Wright and Calvin Ayre are some of the first historical figures. And I think that they have to wipe out these, even Jihan. Jihan is a mythological, he's bridging the two sides, really. There's going to be an ongoing battle with them. It's going to be historical, the epic battle between the two of them, because it's a battle of cultures, it's a battle of mindsets. Yeah. It's very, very interesting, but I do think that Jihan is going to sit this one out. I think he's going to let Craig and Calvin have BCH, because Jihan holds 1 million BCH, and he's in the middle of an initial public offering. Yeah. So he can't really afford to see the price drop too much. So I think he may come in initially and fight for a day or two, and then I think we're going to see a massive capitulation, and he's just going to hand it over.
Wow.
That's my prediction.
So if you were in his shoes, right? What?
In Jihan Wu's shoes?
Yeah. What would you do? Like if you had his resources, if you knew that you had 1 million BCH on the line,
Yep.
what would you personally put into effect?
Well, the one thing you can't do is you can't dump, right? So you
right,
you,
because
you
you're just
can't-
going to drop the value.
Right. Your whole outlook at this point, you're in the middle of an IPO.
Yep.
Not an ICO, folks.
Yep.
An initial public offering of stock in the old culture. Old culture.
Which is an interesting thing that we have the old culture embracing and investing in the new culture. I mean, we're actually going to be using stock.
I think that's Constantine, right? That's
Yeah.
that's the moment when the Roman Empire embraces the Christian ethos. And really, what's so interesting about that is, yeah, that's interesting.
Isn't
Mark.
it interesting? Like
Yeah,
I took a drink and
that's-
I'm like, wow, that's good. And then like something was like, oh, that's interesting. There's almost like a smoky component or something. I mean, there's something odd with this wine.
But it's a good type of odd.
It's a good type of odd. It makes me want to drink more and go, what is that?
I'm into it. That was the one with the coat of arms. That's why we
Yeah.
chose it.
Hedges, which actually applies to what we're talking about because we all want to, hedge our
Hedge.
bets a little bit.
You want to hedge. You want to hedge.
Hodl. Everybody hodl.
Yeah, this is definitely a time for hodling. So what do you do if you're Jihan Wu? I think that what I would do is, well, the other interesting and wonderful part about this is Jihan hates Craig. He hates him. Well, the thing is, Jihan rarely tweets, and he recently, one of his tweets recently was in a reply to one of my tweets, and I was kind of pissed off because his reply got like, so here's my tweet, here's his reply to my tweet, and it's got like thousands of interactions, and my tweet's got like hundreds, and I'm like, that's bullshit. But it's all about fake Satoshi. Like he just calls him fake Satoshi, all of this. So he met, interestingly enough, and the pictures are kind of funny, and people are doing all these memes of them as so the Winklevoss twins showed up at Bitmain's offices yesterday.
Oh.
And so there's pictures of Jihan standing there with the Winklevoss twins.
Wow.
And of course they're like 6'5", and he's, probably 5'5".
Wow.
So they're some pretty funny pictures. They're sort of on either side of him, and he's like this, and he's like basically at their nutsack. And no, Jihan is look. I'm making a joke, but I met him in Hong Kong as well, and he is a very special individual as well. And you would be stupid to not think that he can handle his own. I don't think he's going to be in this fight. I think that what he's going to do, he did do a little show of force, like in classic Chinese style. Did a little parade of weapons, like that they just released the 7nm SHA-256 ASIC.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was all about the hash war. So that was a little show of force, a little parade, you know what I mean? You always want to do that before a war. Just show people what you got, see if they'll back down. But which is so cool that's what's going on. And then the Winklevoss twins show up. So he's like, I've got money, I've got backing. We're ready to do this. But I don't think that that's what he does. I think what he does is he does the IPO, and then I think they make a strong case to their investors. I think they have to let Craig win this. I think it's important. I think it's important for him to let Craig win this for two reasons. One, he can't drop the price of his holdings in the middle of an IPO.
Okay.
Second, if he fights Craig now, investors won't understand. But if he lets Craig take the chain, investors will understand that that Bitcoin is something different than what they thought it was.
Which is a perfect segue
Yes, go ahead.
to what happens if or when Craig wins.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot, actually.
So we're in this, nothing's going to happen until the 15th.
Right. Correct.
When the 15th happens, then like all of this theorizing takes shape and
That's right.
comes into reality.
That's
and we
right.
figure out, okay, what is actually going to happen?
And again, I think as far as my vision goes, where I feel comfortable, we were talking about this earlier.
Well, let's get you uncomfortable because Vinstradamus.
Right.
I mean, you've got your comfortable visions.
Right.
And
My comfortable vision extends into what the battle is and I think who will win.
yeah. What about 2 years from
beyond
now?
that, it gets very foggy.
Cool. What's the fog of war look like?
Okay, so, well, let's talk about what the stakes are. I
Yeah.
think that helps
Absolutely.
to understand what does winning the battle mean. What do you get? And maybe we can start building from there. And maybe you can help me, right?
Sure.
So what are you really fighting for?
Yeah.
I think that's the question, because when all is said and done, the price is going to be lower than it is now.
Mm-hmm.
No question about that, because that's what you're doing in a hash war.
Interestingly enough, though, Bitcoin Cash price has spiked.
Yeah,
Very recently.
well, what that shows is that the market doesn't understand what's about to happen. They think it's an airdrop. See, the people are about to get wrecked because what they think is that shit, I missed out on the Bitcoin BTC BCH split. Oh, they're going to do another split. I'm going to get double my coins. Let me go buy. I'm going to get double my coins, and then when it splits, I'm going to go ahead and sell. Right away, I'm going to dump my coins. I'm going to have double my coins. So it's so worth it. Like, it's even if I buy at 600 and the price drops to 500, then I'll still get 1,000. Like, wow, this is great. No, dude, there's not going to be two chains. You fucked up. You're getting wrecked. Just like when you bought that ICO that was going to do, what were they going to do? They were going to put virtual reality on the blockchain. You fucked up. You fucked up. You're Carlos of the world is not what it used to be. No. Bitconnect. That's your Carlos. You're Carlos.
Oh my
okay.
God, that's phenomenal. Oh my God, that's great.
That's a scam. Yeah, do not. So the price is going to drop because that's what a hash war is. And Craig has told everybody, he's been so kind as to tell everybody what it is, but people don't listen, so they're going to get wrecked. So what do you got? You've got one chain left. It's going to be the SV chain, and the price is going to be significantly lower than it is now. What could the price be? The price could be $200. The price could be $100. If you want to know what the capitulation price is, which this is very interesting because it is maybe the first glimpse at a prediction market that Daniel talked about at the Bitcoin Heretics, and that you seemed particularly interested.
Very interested.
If people watch the video, you will hear Dave ask some very poignant questions to get Daniel to lay out the prediction market idea. And it's interesting because people have not understood what's happening in that prediction market. So Poloniex, and I was talking to Daniel about this. I was like, man, I wish there was just a prediction market where I could just bet on the SV win. Daniel, I was like, this hash war is showing the value of a prediction market. Almost if there was a prediction market that was really good, you could almost prevent the war because you could just allow the war to play out in the prediction market, and then you wouldn't have to have the war.
Sure.
So the prediction market, basically Poloniex said, okay, we'll do this. We'll let you split your BCH, or you could just play with BTC. We'll do some trading pairs. We're going to let you split your BCH, and then you could play it on what we're calling BCH ABC or BCH SV. We're going to leave those as two assets. You can't pull it out until after we decide that everything's good, basically till after the war is over. But you could start trading it now.
So quick question. SV stands for
Satoshi's Vision.
What's ABC stand for?
Adjustable block size. What adjustable? What the fuck is the C?
Why couldn't they
Cap.
have a
adjustable block size cap?
That is not as cool as Satoshi's Vision. I mean,
No,
come
it's
on,
not.
that is a great name.
Yeah, no,
Regardless
it's really
of the
good.
validity of what they're
Well,
doing.
and their symbol is the dragon, which
Yeah.
couldn't be more mythological.
Dude, that is okay. So their dragon symbol.
It's a dragon as a Ouroboros, though. So it's an infinity dragon. It's a dragon in a circle.
Oh, so it's eating its own tail. Fabulous. So they have a cool ass logo.
Yes.
And a cool ass name.
Yeah. Well, they've done everything right.
Damn it. See, I'm telling you,
It's Calvin.
it is.
Of course it is.
100% Calvin.
Of course it is. He's brilliant. Clearly.
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 He has the clarity.
The clear. It really, people think that the Satoshi's vision is referring to Craig, but it's not.
No.
It's referring to Calvin.
Well, I don't even know if it's referring to him personally. I don't know if he would refer to something like, to me, he operates on a different level. Like,
Well, clearly.
he's not in this. Clearly. He's not in this for himself.
No.
He's in this to win a game. And
this is what I've been
he
saying.
has set up
this is
his
what I've
chess
been. This is what
pieces.
I've been saying. To him, he sees a beautiful. See, he's somebody who, again, he made $1 billion
Yeah.
in gaming.
Yeah, this is
He's
beautiful mind shit.
He's a game person.
Yeah.
He saw a game and he saw, wow, this is a game and everybody else is playing it really shittily.
Yeah.
No one even knows that they're in a game, first off.
Right.
No one knows the rules, but I see the rules like right now.
He can see the matrix.
This is a man who made $1 billion in a personal fortune by creating casinos.
Yeah.
He knows games.
Yeah.
The conversation, and it's maybe interesting that he took it there. That's interesting to think about. This lunch that I'm talking about, where he had these individuals, he immediately took the conversation to poker.
Sure.
Maybe we should. He was like, well, maybe we should create a way to have a poker game, like a Bitcoin Cash. We should have a cash game, and everybody should. Do you play poker? Do you? But where he was like pinging.
Yeah.
How interested are these people in poker?
Yeah.
How interested are they in poker? Are they poker players?
What is the most valuable skill to have when playing poker?
I think calmness. A calmness of spirit, for sure.
For sure. And you got to be able to read people.
Oh,
It
yes.
does
Well,
not
you're
matter.
playing the man. You're playing the man. You're not playing the cards.
You're not playing the cards.
No.
You could be the greatest statistician in the world. You could have the highest IQ
It's not
in the
about
world.
that. It's not about that.
It is not about that.
No.
It is 100% about playing
It's
the other
psychology.
player.
Yeah. You're playing the other player.
Yeah. And this guy not only knows how to play the other player, but also gets the other side of it, the statistical side of it,
for sure.
how do
For
I
sure.
make
For
money
sure.
on this side of it. So this is a mind that we're dealing with that understands the entirety of the game, not just the portion of the game that most mortals play.
Right.
So he understands the entirety of the game. He
Right.
is
Right.
one of the gods.
Right.
And he needed a representative on Earth.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that
that's
is
Craig.
Craig Wright.
Yeah, that's him.
And so Craig, the one who thinks deeply but isn't necessarily sane, is playing the game of the clear thinker. The clear thinker is obviously directing this entire thing for his...
Or perhaps not. I think it may have even reached the point where he's just like, okay, Craig is the tool that I need him to be. You let the tool run and then you watch what other people do. Because it's really all about how do others react to... And, I found it so interesting that, this last message that Roger Ver, and after I had, and I don't know whether or not my video on this influenced him one way or the other. I don't know. But, I had put out a video with a little message to Roger Ver, and I had said, all this is going on, and your silence is deafening. And I really just kind of like got in his ass, and it was probably inappropriate of me to do that. But the next day, he happened to make a video response. And in that response, he read and showed on a screenshot an absolutely lunatic, psychotic email that Craig had sent to him well before I had even done my first Hash Wars message, saying, you know, I'm going to bankrupt you if you want a war, like, fuck you, and I'll make it so that no one can trade for 2 years, and blah, 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 blah. It's this absolutely crazy email. But
2 years? Why did he get 2 years?
I don't know.
So how many billions does this guy have?
Well, we don't see. Here's the thing: you don't fully know, because we know how much Calvin has.
Yeah. How much does Calvin have?
As far as I understand, it's around $1 billion.
Just $1
of
billion.
his own personal fortune.
Okay,
But that's his personal fortune. You got to
Right.
understand.
he probably has access to more money than that.
Well, you're talking about taking over Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That's what I've tried to explain to everybody. Just like, if there was a person who could really, really show, I can take over Bitcoin. Here's how I can do it. I need this much money to do it. The people who print money would like to see that happen.
Sure. Absolutely. And that's why I'm saying, like, 2 years is not a random number. So if you have $1 billion, let's say you have $1 billion.
Well, they're saying it would cost $1 million a day,
which is 3 years worth of
right.
funding. So if even with some
so it's like
reserve,
about it's like about what is it? About $750 million is what it would take to do that for 2 years.
yeah. So let's say,
So that's what he's telling you, how much he has at hand.
He's like saying, I have $750 million
Right.
to fuck with you people.
Right.
And that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
And I think the 2 years was a huge clue. I think
That's interesting.
I think that he has been funded to that level.
See, because that is exactly how an insane person would operate,
Yes.
is that he's been given that number. Somebody gave him that number. They said, we can do this for 2 years.
Yeah.
He's been told that.
Yep. And he let it slip.
And he let it slip because he's insane.
Right.
Interesting. I hadn't even thought about that.
That's why I'm here. That's why you and I have this show, because you think about things I don't think about. I think about things you don't think about.
Right.
And we entertain everybody else.
Yeah, that's yeah, no, I mean, he is definitely, he's the people who think that he's in charge. I keep trying to tell them this is by design.
Yeah.
You're supposed to think it's a poker game.
It's a poker game. And it changes. And they're playing hands. And
Yes, they're playing hands. Yes.
You're absolutely correct that, you know, the clear thinker is sitting back and observing and just like nudging where he needs to.
Yep.
Right? Craig's out here doing all the, you know, the flashy stuff.
Right.
You know, that it's poker. It's 100% poker. There are hands being played. This is a long game. I mean, this is let's talk about this idea of it's a long game. Yes.
Because that was in my message to my first little message to Bitcoiners, and I think that it was an effective message.
I watched it. I liked it.
Been
good.
but it's been also widely viewed.
Yes.
And it's been widely commented on. And I know that all of the major players in this thing have seen it. And even those who are major players every major player in the space has seen it, I'm pretty sure, because they've commented on it.
Yeah.
And so in that, you know, one thing that I wanted to communicate to Calvin, because I do not, you know, you've brought it up here where you've said, and I saw that as well. He sees this as he looks at the landscape. It looks very familiar to the games that he knows.
Yeah.
Right? The pattern looks familiar to the games that he knows. But all of those games are finite games. all of those games are games that come to an end and a winner is declared.
Right.
And what's interesting about his communication about this, there's one tweet in particular. He's doing yoga in Thailand, and he says, preparing mind and body. He's got 2 pictures of him doing yoga in Thailand. It's beautiful. I mean, he's staying in some beautiful resort. I don't know whether that's his own home or someplace that he's staying, but he says, preparing mind and body for the coming hash war, and this is last month. And he says, I think hash wars will become a normal part of, they're now going to become a normal part of the Bitcoin ecosystem. So he's letting everybody know this is not the only one that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then he says, and winning will be defined as the person who is willing to take long-term pain in pursuit of their principles. And what I find interesting about that is that he, and Craig does this too, is that they keep referencing the idea of winning.
Right.
And that means you are telling me that you're playing a finite game. Mm-hmm. You're playing a game that ends, because the only way that someone can win is if the game ends.
Right. Because
you cannot declare a winner unless the game has ended.
Right.
But Bitcoin is an infinite game.
Sure.
Just like the game of humanity is an infinite game, or government. And how do you know when you're playing an infinite game? You know because you ask yourself, will this game be going on when I'm dead?
Yeah. Or
did it exist before I was born?
Right.
Were people playing before I was born, and will they be playing after I'm dead? And the game of money, that's definitely true.
So to put this in video game context.
Go ahead.
World
of Warcraft or EVE, all of those are infinite games.
EVE Online, infinite game. It persists. It's a persistent universe. It is a single shard. I believe to this day, still the only single sharded persistent universe available. There are economists that study the economy of EVE because it is, on one hand, the most realistic world economy that's virtual. And also, it's the most libertarian because there are so few, like everybody does everything for themselves, and there's so few regulations on the economy within EVE. But it is completely persistent. There is no such thing as winning EVE. Now, you
can't win.
No, there is no winning. I mean, you can do well and you can do badly,
but you can't actually judge whether or not you're doing good or badly, because that's you can only judge that as versus you can judge 2 points.
Right.
You can pick a point. Yeah. Let's say that point is now.
Yep.
And you can pick some point in the past.
Yeah.
And you can say, am I in a better position now than I was in the past?
Correct. Or am I in a better position than these other players over here?
That's it.
That's it.
But that is going to change tomorrow and the day after and the day after. So my message to Calvin was, you're playing you think you're playing a finite game because you keep saying that you're going to win.
You're right. Yep.
But you're not playing a finite game.
But listen to what he said. He tried to define winning.
Right.
So he took his own view.
Right.
He defined I think we'd define winning as being blah, blah, blah. But he's putting artificial external factors onto something that does not have it in its nature.
But see, that's how he's going to play.
Right.
And this is the thing, when you
by his own rules.
Right. When you understand finite games and infinite games, when you have someone who believes that they're playing a finite game and they're playing a finite game, the system is stable. When you have someone who believes they're playing an infinite game and they're playing an infinite game, the system is stable.
Right.
Satoshi's white paper is describing an infinite game.
Yes.
When you have someone who is who believes they're playing a finite game, but they're playing an infinite game,
yes,
the system becomes unstable.
Correct.
And the most unstable state of the human social organization system is war.
Absolutely. And that, my friend, is why Ted Turner lost the Monday Night Wars.
Because he thought he was playing a finite game.
He thought he was playing a finite game. He came in as an external billionaire saying, I want in on this action, so I'm going to win. I'm going to win. I'm going to buy all the people. I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to put on the big shows. And for a while, he did very well. But Vince, who knows that he's in an infinite game.
Because he's multi-generational. Because Vince knew this game existed before I was born.
Yeah.
And it will exist after I'm dead.
Yeah. And my kids will run it, and their grandkids will run it.
And
blah, blah, and they do.
And they do.
Right.
So Vince is playing an infinite game.
Right.
And if you are in an infinite game, and you understand that you're playing an infinite game, you will always beat the person who thinks they're playing a finite game.
Now, it might take a long time.
But it's an infinite game. And that was in my message. It's funny because people were like, you were trying to give Calvin Ayre business advice. And I was like, that wasn't business advice.
No. That's life advice. That's reality advice.
That wasn't business advice that I was giving him. What I was giving him was a chance to, because you can't win an infinite game, but what is the point of an infinite game? The point of an infinite game is to continue to play.
Yeah.
To survive, to be able to continue to play.
Yep.
And I think that is when you talk about, it's why, so a football game is a finite game. But the game of, let's say, the NFL is an infinite game. And the question is, when this Sunday rolls around, will there be a full roster of games being played? Yes, then you're succeeding at the infinite game of the NFL. When Monday rolls around, will there be a show? Will there be a big, well, not the big show, but will there be a big show on TV that everybody can watch that will be a continuation of the story from last week? Yeah. If yes, then you are playing the infinite game correctly. If no, Ted Turner, then you lost.
You lost. And that's the problem, is that people who play finite games like hands of poker do not understand the long game. You know, if you could even relate it to soap operas. You know, if we don't want to use them.
Seriously.
Yeah. Soap operas have been going on since before my mother was born.
That's right.
When, you know, her
it's the same stories that have carried through.
Same exact stories, because they're the human stories.
Right.
They are the fundamental human stories told in different ways with different scenarios.
Well, and you can, if you know the history, you can do the same thing with wrestling. You can draw the storylines back to the beginning. You can do the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Like, you can draw it all the way back. You can draw it back to the carnies.
Yeah.
Because there are certain narratives and there are certain beefs and certain storylines that have carried. If you really wanted, were an anthropologist about it, you could carry it back to the first carnies. You could find the thread that carried through of the rivalry and whatnot and how it evolved. You could carry it all the way back.
It's all about gang warfare. Because the very first humans gathered together in groups under a hierarchical structure with a leader at the top, just like dogs. People are dogs. And if you have
that's why it's man's best friend.
It is.
Because we can relate to each other.
We can relate because there is a wolf pack, right?
Yes.
And the wolf pack has a leader, and the wolf leader is dethroned at some point by a young upstart.
Yes.
Who then becomes the leader and takes on all the responsibility.
And that's the hero's journey.
That's the hero's journey. But then every wolf pack has the same journey, the same leadership structure, everything else.
That's
and then it's my wolf pack versus your wolf pack.
That's right.
Right? And then it's the Redskins versus the Raiders.
That's
then
right.
It's the, Young and the Restless versus Days of Our Lives.
That's right.
Then it's WWE versus WCW.
That's right.
It's all the same thing. And it's ABC versus SV.
Right.
This week in the garden, we're going to charge you for the whole chair, but you're only going to need the edge.
Oh, dude, cheers to that.
Oh yeah, man.
I mean, this is, what's different about this in terms of the pageantry, or maybe what's not different. What makes this, and it's great that you said the garden, because what makes this a return to the garden, what makes me feel like this is a reset in many ways, and I think this is maybe a level up for humanity as a whole, and how we view ourselves, how we view the world. Western culture started with the Trojan War. Whatever this culture ends up being called. I wrote about it in my book, and I called it crypto savage culture. Whatever it ends up being called, I think it's about to start. I think we're about to get a date on it, and I think that date is November 15th.
I think so too.
And I don't know what that culture looks like. I don't think any of us can anticipate what that culture looks like, but something very, very important is about to happen. Only a very, very few people there are a lot of people alive right now, just like the people who were actually involved in the Trojan War. I mean, it was 10 years. It lasted for 10 years.
Yeah.
But if you took all the people on the earth at that time, and you took the number of people who were actually involved in the Trojan War, it was a tiny fraction of the total people. I mean, even people who were relatively close by, living relatively close by, there's a war going on. I had no idea that they were besieging the city, because how the fuck would you know?
Yeah.
If you were 100 miles away, it had no effect on you.
No.
Maybe you heard that, like, oh yeah, there's that city that I've never been to,
right? Because
how the hell would I get 100 miles away from here?
Yeah.
But some trader was coming through, the guy who comes and is at market every, twice a year, who sells those, beads from wherever, is talking about there's some crazy ass war that's been taking place. And every year we get the kind of update of what's going on. And, it was some tiny piece of the world, but everybody that was there thought it was the most important thing in the universe.
Yeah.
And that's what we're experiencing right now with this hash war.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing is that most people think the most interesting thing that has happened recently was the midterm elections.
Not even close. It's funny because I was specifically thinking about that.
Yeah.
And one, I had forgotten that they even occurred.
I know. Yeah.
I had forgotten that they were even there.
Yeah.
Two, and this thing with like Jeff Sessions leaving and all of this, and I was like, holy crap, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like, that was the greatest moment for me, where I was like, oh shit, I have checked out.
Completely.
I have checked out of the old culture. I fucking checked out of it. I was like, wow, this is
Welcome
awesome.
to New Hampshire, my friend.
I was like, holy shit, this is awesome.
That's the thing. We buy eggs with Bitcoin, and we don't give a fuck about politics.
I was like, I'm out. I'm finally fucking out.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Because it's all just up here.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know that the thing is this. I'm not out of a culture, because you have to be in a culture.
Yeah.
Right? But
a culture of one.
Right. Well, I'm clearly not in a culture of one. I feel like I've probably inserted myself, thanks to Daniel, I think, unfortunately, for better or worse. And he may, in the end, actually be... He may be the emperor of Bitcoin. He may actually be the person who's pulling all the fucking strings, whether he knows it or not.
No, but
he's playing an outsized role in this whole conflict, and I know that he loves this conflict. So
yeah, but deep down, he's a good person.
Oh, he's a great person. He's a great person, and he wants to see Bitcoin succeed.
Hey, I've got a sense. I looked in his eyes. He's a good person. I know that he's not going to do anything intentionally bad.
Right, but I also don't think that he really is making that subjective qualitative judgment about bad or good. I know what he wants, and what he wants is he wants Bitcoin to take over the world.
Sure.
And I know that he knows, and he's made it very clear, that Bitcoin's not going to be able to take over the world if Bitcoin isn't strong, and Bitcoin's not going to be strong if there's not conflict.
Right, but he's not a person to force the issue.
Oh, no, he just lays out his thoughts.
Yeah.
Well, what he does is he finds people who believe that Bitcoin is real. That's the first thing. And then he just speaks to them.
Yeah.
And then you either get it or you don't. And you may have to listen 1,000 times to what it is that he says. But so far, everything that he has said has happened. Things that he has predicted were good ideas have turned out to be good ideas. And things that he's predicted were bad ideas have turned out to be bad ideas for exactly the reasons that he said.
Yep.
And I don't know whether he's profiting on this in the background. I don't know what he's doing.
I'm okay if he is.
Yeah, it's fine. But I think we may end up looking and being like, he is the emperor of Bitcoin, but what we understood emperor to mean is something completely different. As he says, and it's funny, we've got 3 minutes left, so I'm going to throw this at the end. Hopefully people have stopped listening because this is where the secret knowledge comes in. So I only just understood the other day and had a conversation with him about it where he confirmed. He always says that what the emperor of Bitcoin is it is the person who is at the center of the network. And I didn't really quite understand what it was that he was saying until recently. And what he's saying is that, and it's something that I've noted and we've talked about, is that we're moving from the patriarchy to the matriarchy, or we're moving from a system of authority, a system based on authority, to a system based on consensus.
Yeah.
And a system based on authority, as we've talked about on the show, it ends up looking like a pyramid. That's what the pyramid motif has been throughout civilization, which has been the rise of the patriarchy from out of the matriarchy, right? So you have this civilization is the patriarchy. Like, that's the weird part of why the smash the patriarchy and blah blah. Why that works is that it's a hierarchy, and so in the hierarchical system, the pyramid, the person at the top is at the top of the pyramid. That's the eye of the pyramid that's on the dollar bill, the Masonic symbol, why you have the pyramid, why you have the obelisk, and then the pyramid at the top of the obelisk is that you have the one person. This is a authority-based system. You have the general, then the lieutenants, then the sergeants, then the privates, right? And I finally understood that what the center of the network means is that is the matriarchal. So the matriarchy is a circle. It's a many to many. And so the equivalent of the top of the pyramid is the center of the circle. That person whose thoughts flow to everyone.
Right.
And it's not coercive, it's persuasive.
Exactly.
And so he's talking about, that's when he says the ideal Bitcoiner is that person who leads by example, who everyone can imitate.
Yep.
He's talking about the center of the network is that person that everyone looks into in order to imitate. Yeah. So you look at like the Kardashians, they are the center of the network. Everybody is looking at them to behave. It's perverse, right? So that's the perverse version of it, but it's the emergence of the matriarchy. That they're not coercing anybody to go and get ass implants, but everybody's going and getting ass implants because they got ass implants.
Could also be the Pope.
Could also be the Pope. Absolutely. Yeah. But the Catholic Church recognizes that it's a matriarchy because Mary is, you say Hail Marys, you don't say Hail Jesuses. Right. Mary is actually above Jesus in the Catholic Church. She's how you get to Jesus, to talk to Jesus. So it is a matriarchy. It's the center of the network. And when I finally understood what he meant, I was like, holy shit.
So he's the Pope of Bitcoin.
He's the Pope of Bitcoin. He's the Holy Roman Emperor of Bitcoin.
Excellent.
So with that, we are at 10 o'clock.
You know, this show, honest to God, I got to say, we do have so much fun talking about UFOs and government conspiracies and Bigfoot, etc. But, maybe a little more current events would be good for us.
Well, we've got updates from the front. I think this could end up being a thing that we do. I mean, it's destination unknown. We don't know where this thing is going. So
we have no idea.
If you guys want to contribute to Destination Unknown, how you contribute is you contribute in the form of vino, because
yes,
in vino veritas, in wine is the truth, and we would like to bring you the truth. You do that by going to vinarmani.com/wine. That'll take you to wink.com, and you can get a gift certificate to send us some wine. We would love that. We will see you again next week. Who knows what we'll be talking about? Who knows where this hash war is going? I have a feeling it'll be another hash war show.
The hash war has.
Yes, because I have a feeling that this is going to be a popular topic. So thank you all for tuning in. Thank you once again, sir. We're going to finish off our wine, but we're going to let you guys go. We'll see you again next week on Vin and Dave's Destination Unknown.